The oak edge of the dining table dug into my palms. A band of fire clamped around my stomach, pulling tighter until the edges of the room went completely white. A groan ripped through my teeth. Brenda dragged her manicured fingernails across the marble counter. My car keys jingled as she scooped them up and dropped them straight into her leather clutch. The metal clasp snapped shut like a gunshot. She leaned in close. Her perfume smelled like expensive roses and cold entitlement. "Stop faking these contractions for attention," she hissed. "Tyler is pulling the ring out for Madison in 5 minutes. You are not going to ruin her aesthetic moment with your drama." A second wave of pain folded me in half. Sweat dripped off my chin onto the hardwood floor. I stared at the purse sitting on the kitchen island. The truth slammed into my chest, heavier than the contraction itself. My mother was completely willing to let my baby die right here if it meant keeping a clean background for my sister's engagement photos. I dragged myself across the hallway floor. The cool hardwood offered zero relief from the fire tearing through my lower back. I am a 32-year-old emergency room nurse. For my entire life, I have been the family's glass child. I was the one expected to be completely invisible, endlessly capable, and entirely self-sufficient. I absorbed the background radiation of my parents' dysfunction so they could pour every ounce of their energy into Madison. Madison was 26, an aspiring lifestyle influencer, and the undeniable golden child. She was a show car, polished and presented to the world, while I was the mechanic expected to work in the dark. If Madison scraped her knee, the world stopped spinning. If I shattered my arm, I was told to ice it quietly so I would not interrupt her dance recital. And tonight, the show car was getting an upgrade. Tyler was 33, drove a leased Porsche, and spoke in a relentless stream of corporate buzzwords. He was pitching a $250,000 luxury development investment to my father, Mitchell, but Tyler was not just asking for money. He had brought a 100-page partnership compliance document. Mitchell, desperate to look like a high-rolling investor who understood the game, had been bragging all night. He sat at the head of the table, swirling a glass of Merlot, signing the pages with a gold pen. He refused to hire a lawyer. He wanted to look like the smartest man in the room. He was completely blind to the quitclaim deed buried on page 68. Mitchell was signing away the title of his own home to Tyler's corporate trust, convinced he was dodging capital gains taxes on a massive future payout. Brenda did not love Madison. That was the coldest truth of our family dynamic. Brenda loved what Madison could catch. Tyler was a walking, talking return on investment. If Madison secured the ring, Brenda secured her status in the suburban hierarchy. My labor was an inconvenience. My pain was a threat to the aesthetic of the evening. They were practically stepping over my writhing body to toast their own financial delusion. I reached the garage door, gripping my phone with shaking hands. Brenda had stolen my physical keys, but she had underestimated me. She always did. I pulled myself up against the drywall and opened my car's digital key app. The loading circle spun on the screen. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. My chest heaved. I could hear Brenda's heels clicking in the kitchen, pouring more champagne. Laughing at a joke Tyler made, the app finally connected. The heavy clunk of my car doors unlocking echoed through the damp garage. I slumped into the driver's seat and hit the push-to-start button. The engine roared to life, but my dashboard lit up with a harsh warning. My phone battery was at 8%. If my phone died, the car's security system would shut down the engine. I had a countdown running alongside my labor. I backed out into the pouring Charlotte rain. Interstate 85 was a dark, slick ribbon of asphalt. The wipers slapped back and forth. barely keeping up with the deluge. A massive semi-truck drifted into my lane near the university exit, throwing a sheet of muddy water across my windshield. My tires hydroplaned for a terrifying half second. My chest tightened as another contraction hit, harder and sharper than the last. I forced myself to use every breathing technique I taught my own patients. In through the nose, 4 counts hold. Out through the mouth. Keep your eyes on the white dashes. Count the streetlights. 1, 2, 3. I was completely alone, gripping a steering wheel with white knuckles, fighting for my life and my son's life. The sheer biological terror of being abandoned by my own blood was worse than the physical agony. My body was splitting open, and my family was taking pictures with a man who was quietly robbing them blind. The red glow of the emergency room drop-off sign finally broke through the rain. I threw the car into park at an aggressive angle and laid on the horn. The sliding glass doors burst open. Jason, my husband, sprinted out into the downpour. He is a high school teacher, a man who handles chaos with quiet, unshakable competence. He had been terrified when I stopped answering my texts. Right behind him were my coworkers, the triage nurses who knew me better than my own mother ever did. They did not ask questions. They grabbed a wheelchair and took over. The terror of the highway vanished instantly, replaced by the fierce, unconditional protection of people who actually cared about my survival. 3 hours later, my son was born safely. He arrived screaming, furious at the world, which felt like the most honest reaction to the entire night. Jason pressed his forehead against mine, his shoulders shaking as tears soaked into my hospital gown. The tension I had carried for 3 decades snapped. This was my chosen family. This was what real safety felt like. The delusion of my biological family arrived the next morning. At 9 o'clock, the heavy wooden door to my recovery room swung open. Brenda and Mitchell marched in, holding a massive bouquet of blue balloons and flanked by a hired photographer holding a professional camera. They wanted the perfect social media post. They wanted to hold the grandson they had abandoned in the rain just 12 hours prior, smiling for their country club friends on Facebook. I swallowed the lump in my throat and stared at them. I did not raise my voice. I calmly reached for the red call button clipped to my pillow. Because I am staff, my code pulled security immediately. 2 large guards stepped into the room within 30 seconds. I pointed directly at my parents. Get them out of my room. I said, my voice steady and cold. Brenda's face flushed purple. The fake warmth evaporated, replaced by genuine fury. She started screaming about her rights as a grandmother, thrashing against the guard's grip, demanding respect. The entire maternity ward watched in dead silence as she was physically escorted into the hallway, her balloons dragging across the linoleum. I looked her dead in the eye before the heavy doors swung shut. You chose an aesthetic over my life. You have no grandson. 7 months passed in absolute, gorgeous silence. We built a beautiful routine. Jason and I thrived. My freelance nursing shifts stabilized. And our son learned to laugh. We changed the locks on our house and blocked every number associated with my parents. Then, the house of cards collapsed in spectacular fashion. Tyler vanished. He emptied the shell accounts, abandoned the leased Porsche at an airport long-term lot, and ghosted Madison completely. But the real devastation hit Mitchell exactly where it hurt most. That 100-page document he had so proudly signed, it was a legally binding death sentence. Tyler had used the quitclaim deed to legally sell my parents' house to a third-party cash buyer. A ruthless property management company served Brenda and Mitchell a 30-day eviction notice. When the money evaporated, the golden child lost her shine. Madison threw a massive tantrum on the front lawn, screaming that her aesthetic life was ruined. She packed her designer luggage, ordered a luxury rideshare, and abandoned her parents. She left them to face the eviction alone, opting to couch surf with friends rather than deal with poverty. The narcissist ledger had finally balanced itself. Brenda had sacrificed me for an investment that left her completely bankrupt. And her prized asset walked away without a second glance. But a cornered narcissist does not reflect. They retaliate. Desperate, humiliated, and facing absolute homelessness. Brenda made one final, spiteful move. She wanted leverage. She wanted to force me to open my doors and let them move in. She called Child Protective Services. She filed an anonymous, fabricated report claiming my childhood trauma made me a highly unstable, abusive mother. She told them my son was in immediate danger. She thought if she threatened the one thing I loved most, I would cave. The knock on my door came on a Tuesday afternoon. The investigator held a clipboard, looking apologetic but deadly serious. She explained the allegations. Jason answered the door. He did not argue, and he did not panic. He calmly walked to his office desk and retrieved a meticulously organized black binder. He handed it over. It contained time-stamped hospital records from the night of the birth, documenting my independent arrival and active labor while my parents were miles away. It contained the high-definition security footage of Brenda's unhinged screaming match with the hospital guards. It contained a timeline of Tyler's fraud, court records of my parents' pending eviction, and the unhinged voicemails Brenda had left on my work phone months prior. The investigator sat at my kitchen table and flipped through the pages. The evidence was irrefutable. The case was officially marked as unfounded and actively malicious before she even finished her coffee. We did not wait for Brenda to try another angle. Jason and I took that exact binder straight to the county courthouse. We filed for an emergency temporary restraining order. Because of the documented hospital harassment and the malicious government filing, the judge took one look at the file and granted the order ex parte. 2 days later, process servers walked up the manicured lawn of a house my parents no longer owned. They found Brenda and Mitchell packing cardboard boxes in the living room. The servers handed them the thick legal envelopes. The order mandated they stay 500 feet away from me, my husband, my son, and my workplace. If they violated it, they faced immediate, non-negotiable arrest. They were left with absolutely nothing. No money in the bank. No home to sleep in. An empty golden child who refused to answer their calls. And a towering legal wall separating them from the only daughter who had actually built a stable, successful life. I sit on my back porch now, watching Jason push our son on the wooden swing he built from scratch. The afternoon sun filters through the oak trees, casting long, warm shadows across the grass. The air smells like fresh rain and coffee. It is quiet. It is the kind of profound, heavy, quiet you only truly appreciate after surviving a lifetime of manufactured chaos. When you grow up in a toxic environment, your brain becomes permanently wired for war. You learn to read the slight shift in your mother's tone before she even finishes a sentence. You learn to interpret the weight of your father's footsteps on the stairs. You become an expert in predicting the storm before the first drop of rain ever falls. But the hardest part of surviving a family like mine is not the escape. The hardest part is the unlearning. It is the agonizing daily process of sitting in a peaceful room and convincing your nervous system that you are actually safe. It takes years to stop bracing for a blow that is no longer coming. Brenda did not call the authorities because she cared about my son. She called them because I had taken away her control. and to a person like her. Losing control is a fate worse than death itself. When a narcissist loses their shiny objects, the big house, the leased cars, the bragging rights at the country club, they will burn the earth to punish the person who refused to fund their illusion. They want you to share their misery because misery is the exact only currency they have left in their pockets. I have spent hours staring at the ceiling in the dark, mourning parents who are still walking the earth. It is a very specific, lonely type of grief. You are not mourning the people they actually were. You are mourning the phantom parents you always hoped they would eventually become. You mourn the mother who should have held your hand during labor, and the father who should have protected your home. But they proved exactly who they were at 73 miles an hour in the pouring rain. They showed me their true faces, and I finally stopped looking away. I want to share 3 truths I had to learn the absolute hard way. Rule number 1, blood is just biology, but loyalty is family. For 27 years, I let my parents use our shared DNA as a free pass for terrible, selfish behavior. I thought that because we were related, I owed them my endless endurance. I was entirely wrong. Family is not an entitlement handed out at birth. Family is an action. It is the people who sprint out into the freezing rain to catch you when you fall. It is the coworkers who throw a professional shield around you without asking questions. It is the husband who builds a fortress to keep the monsters out of your living room. You do not owe your life, your sanity, or your resources to people who would not offer you a glass of water if you were dying of thirst in front of them. Rule number 2, a narcissist's love is a ruthless transaction, and the bank always wins in the end. My parents viewed my sister as an appreciating asset and me as a depreciating liability. They invested everything into Madison because she was the bait for Tyler's wealth. They were running a cutthroat business, not raising a family. But here is the devastating secret about transactional love. The very moment the asset depreciates, the love vanishes into thin air. You cannot ever earn the unconditional love of someone who is meticulously keeping a ledger of your flaws. You will always be in debt. Stop trying to balance an account that was rigged against you from the day you were born. Rule number 3, silence is not peace, it is permission. For years, I truly thought taking the high road meant staying quiet. I thought if I just absorbed the insults, the drama would eventually pass. But toxic people do not respect your silence. They view it as an open invitation to push harder. Filing that restraining order was the hardest, most terrifying thing I ever did. But it was the only way to truly win the war. You cannot outlove toxic behavior. You cannot reason with someone who is firmly committed to misunderstanding you to protect their own ego. You can only outmaneuver them. Gather your evidence and build a legal wall so high they cannot possibly climb it. My son will never know what it feels like to be a glass child. He will never have to shrink himself to fit comfortably into his own home. He will never have to count the white dashes on a dark, flooded highway, wondering if anyone in the world is coming to save him. He will grow up completely knowing that his mother faced the monsters, expose their lies, and lock them outside in the cold forever. He will know peace because I went to war. So, I have to ask you a very serious question. How much of your own peace are you sacrificing right now? Just to keep a seat at a table where you aren't even respected. If they left you in the rain to protect their own image, why are you still spending your energy trying to buy them an umbrella? You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to ruthlessly protect your peace. If you are breaking generational curses today, drop a 100 in the comments below. Share this video with anyone who needs the courage to finally stand up, pack their bags, and walk out the door. You are worth so much more than the scraps they throw you from their broken tables. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there yelling, Why did she even go to that dinner in the first place? How could she stay at a table where she was so clearly disrespected? Let me stop you right there. Rachel was not weak, and she was not stupid. She was trapped in what psychologists call the slot machine effect, or intermittent reinforcement. When you grow up in a toxic household, especially as the invisible glass child, the abusers do not treat you terribly 100% of the time. Every now and then, they drop a tiny crumb of hope. An invitation to a family dinner, a forced smile. You keep pulling the lever, hoping that this time you will hit the jackpot and they will finally see your worth. But the game is rigged. They do not want to love you. They just want an audience for their own aesthetic. Rachel only broke the addiction when her physical survival overrode her emotional conditioning. Now, let us talk about the street smart strategies Rachel and Jason used to actually win this war. Because this story is an absolute masterclass in psychological and financial self-defense. First, let us look at the audit strategy. Look at Mitchell and the scammer. Tyler. Con artists do not use magic, they use your own ego against you. Tyler handed over a 100-page document with a quitclaim deed buried on page 68. Mitchell signed it because he was too arrogant to admit he needed a lawyer. He wanted to look rich and smart in front of his family. Real wealth audits everything. If someone hands you a massive contract and pressures you to sign it to look like a savvy team player, walk away. Scammers absolutely hate details and legal reviews. Second, look at how Jason executed building the case. When Brenda sent the state after them with a false abuse report, Jason did not panic. He did not yell at the investigator or try to desperately defend Rachel's character. He handed over a black binder, time-stamped hospital records, saved, unhinged voicemails, high-definition security footage in a crisis. Your emotional defense is completely useless. Hard data, organized receipts, and a meticulous paper trail are your absolute best shield. Finally, the legal buyout. Rachel and Jason did not just survive the attack, they took that exact binder and secured an emergency temporary restraining order. Sometimes, the absolute best investment you will ever make in your entire life is the legal fee required to build a permanent wall between you and the people trying to destroy your peace. Here is the final verdict. Blood does not give anyone a free pass to drain your sanity or your bank account. You cannot heal in the exact same environment that broke you. If you have ever had to build your own binder, set a hard boundary, or walk away from a rigged table, I want you to drop a 100 in the comments below. Share this video with someone who needs the courage to change their locks. Hit that subscribe button for more survival strategies. And I will see you in the next one.